Speaking of Courage podcast, we're finally back.
Back from a little delay.
Yeah, the delay was COVID-19.
Yep, Donnie gave me COVID.
Chase,
we missed a couple
yeah,
weeks.
we hung out outside the show and we spread COVID to each other.
Yeah.
So we've been out for, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Yeah,
like that.
we've missed 2 episodes, but we've been down for 2.5 weeks.
I had delayed reaction. Chase got it probably worse than anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, not
a
the
couple weeks
not
off.
the end of the world, but slowed us
no-
down a little bit. So.
Yeah. God, I was so lazy and tired. So that's why we haven't been in the studio to record, but we are back. And where are we headed today?
We're doing World War II, and we're heading back to the skies again. We're doing
Yes.
another Air Corps episode.
I saw the uniform that you brought in.
Yeah.
And these are the uniforms that you talked about where people would see it. They always wanted to be in the Air
Right.
Force.
Mm-hmm.
You can see why. They look badass.
Well, the Marines have the nicest uniforms, the dress blues.
They're better than the Air Force?
That's the solid blue one.
Yeah.
And then they have the pants with the blood stripe and stuff.
Right.
Those they'll catch your eye from a long way.
Is that the one
I
with the
actually don't
sword
like
on the
them.
commercial?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
can. The
those are
NCOs
good.
have the sword and the white hat and
Phew.
stuff. But
Yeah.
When they're playing chess, fighting dragons and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I wonder how that commercial meeting went. Like,
Yeah,
let's have
exactly.
dragons shooting
Yeah.
fire.
Yeah, it's Marines
Yeah.
for you. They fight dragons on chessboards, apparently.
Have you ever done any dragons on chessboards?
No,
never.
I don't think so. Yeah. But,
What country is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what year are we talking here?
This is World War II again, and it's kind of interesting. Like I said, I've never been fascinated with the Air Corps or the Air Force. I like the infantry stories, but this is our third Air Corps episode we're doing.
Norton, right?
Yeah. We did Norton and Snuffy Smith.
Yep.
Both of those were in Europe. We're going to the Pacific, in the skies of the Pacific now.
Was that just as bad?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was different, but there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
You still have the flak. You're still flying over these enemy-held islands. There's a lot more naval-type engagements, attacking ships and things. You're still dealing with the Japanese Zeros, the fighter planes that are coming at you. You're still dealing with, 15-hour missions, 10-hour missions of boredom, punctuated by this extreme... Like we talked about, anytime you're afraid of being on a plane, now imagine the enemy attempting to kill you. Imagine all these giant, massive formations dropping bombs. You could hit each other with the bombs.
Well, that's the thing with when we talk
stuff.
about Air Corps guys is everybody can relate to a fear of flying. I would
Right.
imagine at some point in your life.
Yeah.
And you hit turbulence and you're looking at the
exactly.
stewardess. Now imagine knowing that there's people out there that want to blow that thing up.
And
you
your
know?
plane was made in a factory in
And
hours
it's
and
noisy
months together,
and
and there's not a lot of
squeaky
creature
and-
comforts. And you're hearing and feeling everything. So definitely that's a long sustained type of courage, which is a very difficult thing to do.
These are the ones that scare me, man.
And these acceptable losses, again, of just if we lose 10, 15 planes on this raid, it is what it is, We'll
a lot of
talk a bit
casualties
about
in
that.
this?
Yeah, absolutely. In the Pacific and in Europe. One thing that was worse for the flyers in the Pacific than in Europe, most of the flyers were stationed in England that were in the 8th Air Force flying over, or they were in Italy if they were in the 15th Air Force and stuff. So when you're in England, when you're not on your mission, you go back to the chow hall, you go to the English countryside, you get a little English girlfriend and what have you. In the Pacific, you go back to a hut, where there's spiders and bugs and you play cards and
Where's
you don't
this
have
at?
anything to do. So our episode today, this is the end of the war. It's Henry Red Erwin. He was stationed in Guam is where they were flying out of, and they were attacking the Japanese mainland.
And that's jungle or what is that?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, Guam is jungle. We fought for Guam. This was after when our troops were there.
Yeah.
But you're just living in huts. There's still scattered Japanese on the island. There's a lot of bugs. There's a lot of insects. There's a lot of critters. There's no creature comforts. The only things there are what the CB's built for you, basically.
Yeah.
So you're not going to go watch a movie or anything. You're going to go just sit
What
in
were
your
the
bunks.
CBs? That's a little off topic, but I've seen
the
that
Navy
before.
Construction Battalion.
So they'd go in?
Yeah, CB is Construction Battalion, and then they changed it to CB. It's a little B with a wrench and a thing. Yeah, they would go in and they would build all the, you can't land a plane on sand, so you have to put down the steel and you have to put down all that, so that's where the CBs would come in. They were construction
Dangerous
workers.
job?
Yeah, they were construction workers. A lot of them were older guys, but they had to be able to fight, too, to defend themselves because they could be attacked.
Because they're first
obviously.
in, right?
Yeah, not necessarily, but a lot of times they were in there.
Crazy,
but they'd build
man.
all the roads. They'd build these airstrips, like we talked about. Compared to war, all other forms of human endeavor are strength and insignificance. If you wanted to clear a section of island, put a freaking airport down, essentially,
It would take you years.
It would take decades in the civilian. They would do it in a month or a week. Now we got the plane, we got the place for them to land. Start bringing them in, and then as they're doing that, they'll start building a place to live. And as they're doing, and it would grow and grow.
Just boom, man. Starts that whole economic thing, man, where everything gets built quick.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they were every World War II and the military in general is just everyone has to do their job together.
Yeah.
To make this massive machine.
What's his name?
Our guy today?
Yeah.
Henry Eugene Erwin. They called
Henry-
him Gene, or Red was his nickname with that
Henry
red hair.
Erwin. Oh, Red, another ginger. Right on.
There you go. He looks
Power
like Donnie.
to him, yeah.
He actually looked a little bit like Matt Damon with
So
the red
like
hair.
me.
So just like you, yeah. Exactly. That's what everybody tells you,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so where's he born?
So he's from Alabama.
Southern boy.
Southern boy, yeah, outside of Birmingham in a coal mining village, essentially. So
Tough.
we already have the depression going on, but you add to that, it's a coal town. His dad's a coal miner, basically, which is the
I just
lowest of
picture
poverty.
tough.
Oh,
I just
absolutely.
picture like tough, hard ass dads that have very little patience for your bullshit.
Well, the coal miners, I mean, they're going, whether you work day shift or night shift, they'll never see the sunlight sometimes. They go to sleep at night, and then they go down to the mines.
And there's no good wages in that?
No,
Yeah.
it's a miserable system. It's the company store system, the
Oh,
company system,
yeah,
and all
so
that.
it's
So
like a slavery
he's a
deal.
part of that. Essentially, yeah, they'll go down, they'll work their whole shift, they'll come up, they'll go to. It's miserable, you know. So he's growing up in this extreme poverty. He's the oldest of 6 brothers and 1 sister, so he's a big family. But he has a happy life. So his dad's not a terrible person.
Yeah.
They're a Methodist family, very religious. So his dad's warm and comforting, even though he has this miserable job.
Yeah.
Henry grew up. He's a Boy Scout. He's pretty much happy. He's a good kid. He's real smart. He used to like to sit against the trees and watch the planes fly over. He always dreamed of being a pilot,
Yeah.
right?
Oldest brother again, huh?
Yeah, again, oldest out of 6 brothers and 1 sister. So it's a
Wow.
big family too. Like I said, he dreamed of being a pilot. He's got these big ambitions. When he's 10 years old, his dad dies of black lung, essentially, inhaling all
Man.
that coal dust. So you already are living in poverty. You are living in a coal town, and now you just lost the breadwinner. So at 10 years old, he literally becomes the man of the house. This isn't, the
That's my
expression.
daughter's age.
Yeah, this isn't the expression of, oh, you better pick it up.
Yeah.
The mom can't work. She's got to take care of all these kids. So this coal company actually did good by the family. They let him work in the company store. So he was stocking shelves and things, trying to make money for his family. They allowed them to do that.
That's cool.
Yeah, so they stayed on for a little while. When he was 17, though, he had to drop out of high school to join the Civilian Conservation Corps, which is the CCC, which was a job corps, essentially. So
Yeah.
it's similar to the military.
Is it to prep you for military?
It was to get people jobs, but they used a military structure to do it. So there was
Okay.
military guys.
Way
in
to
it.
get
So,
them money.
Yeah, they had rank. They lived in barracks. They would have to send most of their money home to their families. But you had young kids. You had older guys. In the Charlie Barger episode, he joined the CCC. That
Yeah.
might come after this one or before. But it's a way to get people out, and then they're using it for America. So when you're in the CCC, what he was doing is they're doing road improvements. They're planning on the sides of the roads. He started in Alabama, went to California. They're fighting wildfires. They're doing road engineers.
So it's a way to stimulate the economy.
It's a
keep
way to
people
stimulate
busy.
the economy, keep people out of trouble, and do things we need to do. So a lot of these, like even in California, if you go up into the mountains, down these trails,
Yeah.
and you see those old like wood steps, the CCC did all that.
Oh, okay.
That's where a lot of that stuff comes from.
Okay.
Yeah, so-
National park stuff?
A lot of that, yeah. They were big time in the national parks. They were all over the place. So it was real cool. And then it did have that added benefit that it was a preparation for the military for a lot of these guys, because in the late 30s and stuff.
So this is able to keep his family afloat?
Yeah, so he's sending a lot of money home doing this. He was so smart and so intelligent and such a good hard worker. At 17 years old, he was a first sergeant in the CCC.
Nice.
So he was in charge of 220 guys as
Wow.
a 17-year-old. But he did that for several years. By the time he turned 19 or 20, he was back in Alabama working in a steel mill. So he goes from coal mining to hard outdoor
Jeez.
work to working in a steel mill. Because they need that money. So these dangerous jobs, guys.
I wonder
die
what
in
that
steel
even
mills.
looks like, a 17-year-old in charge of a couple hundred guys.
Right.
That didn't even make
Yeah,
sense
guys
in
and
this day and
kids.
age.
Well, it's you're wearing the stripes just like you would.
But
be
I
in the
wonder
military.
if a 17-year-old at that time was probably looked at much differently if he was
that's
I mean?
Get a lot of
rougher
17-year-olds
guy.
married and had kids and stuff.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you hear
You're like a
about that
30-year-old
lot.
at that, you know what I mean?
Pretty much.
That's
And you-
wild.
And you age like one.
Yeah, yeah. Man, did you see, way off subject, you don't watch football, but
No, I sure
Tom
don't.
Brady is, one of the best quarterbacks ever, 43 years old, and he just broke the record of the oldest quarterback to win a playoff game. And he broke George Blanda's record, and they had a side-by-side photograph. Tom Brady looks like he could walk down a runway. George
Yeah.
Blanda looks like he just smoked. He looks 60 years old, dude.
Think about grandmas at 50 when
Yes.
we were kids. And it's a women now when they're in their 50s.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
How old is Jennifer Lopez? She's in her 40s.
Oh, I know. She looks 20, dude.
Yeah, so... But anyways, back in 1941, he's back working in a steel mill. He saves enough money that he's actually able to buy a house for his mom. So just to show you what kind of person this is. Again, and he's doing things right. He's very religious. He's a church volunteer. He's dedicating his life to serving his family at this point, right? But 1941, as we know, war's on the horizon at this point. So he feels like it's his duty. All of his brothers join the military. So there's 7 Erwins go in the military. He doesn't want to shirk his responsibility. So he goes and he takes an Air Force equivalency test, basically, because he didn't graduate high school. But he wants to be a pilot. And he does very well. In July of 42, he takes that exam. He ends up joining the reserves, and then he gets accepted as an aviation cadet. So his dream to be a pilot, he's finally going to get that dream, right?
Oh, they're going to get him in there.
Yeah, so in February of 1943...
How old is he at this point?
He was born in 21, so he was about 20.
Jeez.
Yeah,
the story you've already told, he sounds like he's 50.
He's already been a steel mill worker, bought his mom a house,
coal
miner. Obviously. Well, his dad was the coal miner, but he gets accepted into aviation cadets. I think he goes to Taylor Field in Florida.
Yeah.
As soon as he starts in the piloting program, they realize he's not going to be a pilot.
Why?
So despite how smart he is and how technically skilled he is, he can't land properly. So every single time he tries to land, he screws it up, and they have to basically take over and stuff. So he just does not do well. He can't land, so they kick him out of the program for what's called a flying deficiency.
Yeah.
So if you notice on the uniform, he's a staff sergeant here. The pilots and everything are officers. So
how do you know he's a staff sergeant?
The rank on the sleeve. So an officer would have like lieutenant bars or captain bars or major bars. Enlisted officers, essentially.
So he doesn't become a pilot.
Yeah, so it shatters his dream. You know, that's all he ever wanted to do is be a pilot. He was almost there. He was that close, but like some of the other guys have said, you can't fix that. If you are in training
so there is like some talent that comes with it.
Oh, God, yeah. To be a pilot on these big planes and things, especially, I mean, this is 1940. When was Kitty Hawk? When was the Wright brothers flight? That was 40 years before or less,
we're
right?
Still early.
Yeah, we're still early. You better figure it out. So there's no fixing it. Because he's so intelligent and he's so able and he's such a good soldier, though, they offer him a 17-week program at Yale to be a communications officer. But he actually turns that down because he's like, you know what? Like, by now it's 1943. He wants to get in the fight.
Yale?
Yale is Yale.
Yeah,
Yale.
So
like
that's
Harvard,
that's
Yale.
a high up thing.
Right. It was prestigious, but
Ivy.
he says, no, I want to get in the fight, so he accepts his job as a radio operator, basically.
In the Air Force.
In the Air Force. So a radio operator and technician. So every plane, you know, these 10-man crews or 12-man crews, depending on the plane, you can have your pilot, your co-pilot, your bombardier, your communication officer. Radio operator is going to be one of those crew members.
Oh, yeah. So that was the ball turret guy.
Exactly.
And the radio guy is what? Communicating?
Right. So his job is to orchestrate radio communication, maintain the radio equipment. He's going to be dropping the flares. He's the communication hub for that plane. He's going to be in contact with all the other planes and back on the base and everything.
And so that group is just a cohesive unit.
Absolutely.
You know, you're only as good as your radio, as your bomber.
Exactly. So he ends up on the B-29, which are 11-man crews. So he's going to be that essential part of that. He's
was
the
that
voice
the same
of the captain.
As Norton?
No, he was on a completely different type.
Okay.
A much smaller plane.
Okay. So these are bigger.
Yeah, so the B-29s are huge. So around July 43, he accepts this job. He ends up military training. He goes to Alabama, Mississippi, New Mexico, Florida, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Texas, for all these little schools to finish up.
Wow.
While he's doing this, he meets another woman at a church event, Martha Starnes. He ends up falling in love with her. He courts her, and then they end up getting married as well.
Okay.
So he's got a young wife. He's in his early 20s at this time when they finally get sent overseas. So he's married in December of 1944. They're training on those B-17s, and then he gets sent to the B-29s, which he volunteers for, which are just massive. The way they usually describe them is they look like they're too big to fly, basically. I had some notes on here.
And that's just an 11-man crew?
Yeah, it's an 11-man crew, but it carries 8 tons of bombs. It's a long-range plane, so it can make these huge round ships. They were designed to bomb Japan, essentially. So we have all these little outlying islands. They built this B-29 super fortress, so we don't need the escort pilots.
So they don't need the small planes?
It'd be nice to have them, but they're not always going to have them. So this carries so much fuel, so much bombs. It has 12 50 cal guns on it. So instead of just having 2 gunners or 3 gunners.
So those gunners are actually running around the plane?
No, they're in their positions. It's an 11-man crew, and you have 12 guns. So one of the things about the B-29 is it's one of the first planes that was pressurized. So remember we talked about the other guys have all their stuff. They have AC, they have heat, they have controls on their weapons. So you're not actually firing the trigger. You're, almost like pushing buttons, essentially. They're guided.
So they're not getting the recoil or any of that.
This is a beast of a machine, and it's made to...
Was it a game changer?
Bomb Japan. Yeah, it's a game changer. It's huge. There's accounts from the Japanese when they would look up at the sky and see them and be like, oh my God, what is that thing?
Yeah.
It's just massive. Like I said, it was too big to fly. The other thing about it is it has a 32,000 foot ceiling, meaning it can fly at an altitude of 32,000 feet, which is above most of the flak. So that's a game changer.
Yeah.
The Japanese or the Germans, we didn't use these in Europe, but they're shooting the flak up. These planes fly so high, they can just fly above it.
And they can attack from that?
They can drop their bombs from that height, but we'll get into that in a little bit. The wingspan is 141 feet.
Damn.
And it's 99 feet long. So the average cruising speed is 200 and 250 miles per hour, just cruising along. But these things are huge. They have a lot of firepower, and they have 8 tons of bombs. I think that's something like 4 times what the B-17s can have.
That's crazy.
Think about that and how big.
And when were these introduced? Throughout the war?
1944, 1945.
Oh, so
at the very end of the war, yeah.
So this could have been like the death nail then, in a lot of cases?
That was the idea. That's what we were using it for in the Pacific.
Yeah, just to shut it down.
We're going to strike at the heart of Japan. Yeah, we've fought our way inch by inch, island by island, to get close enough to do this, and now we're bringing the big guns.
Damn! Imagine seeing that thing coming over the horizon.
Exactly,
dude. That'd be terrifying.
And that's what this is. This is all an arms race.
Yeah.
Whether it's the arms race isn't just nuclear. It's the tanks are getting better, the bombs are getting better, the planes are getting better.
And if you're not getting better, you're getting steamrolled.
And that's why America was successful, because we had the arsenal of democracy, the United States, these giant factories that aren't getting attacked. Germany, Japan, all these other places. Germany, they can only put up as much as their factories can produce. If we're bombing their factories, they're losing those, right? It's like playing a little game.
We've never been hit on the homeland, really.
We can just keep pumping them out. They're pumping out 2.5 planes a day or something
so
like
their
that.
battles that they win, they're not winning anything.
Exactly.
They're keeping.
That's exactly what a war of attrition is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never really thought about it like that, but you're right. Like, the more we're winning in an enemy territory...
Yeah.
We're in an enemy, so we're
if you knock 10 of our planes out and we knock 5 years out, who gives a shit? Because we can make 10 more and you can't make any more.
Yeah,
right. That's how the Civil War was too.
That's a trip, man.
Yeah,
what a difference, huh? Where the war's fought.
Right. That's
very similar to MMA.
Exactly.
The wrestler wins because he determines where the fight goes.
But you have the added effect of if you're training for a fight and I'm training for a fight, and every day someone comes in and beats you up while you're sleeping too, and the other guy's well rested. The United States
burning your gym down.
Our factories are essentially untouched. Theirs are going, and that's some of the things that we're targeting. They're targeting, ball bearing factories and jet fuel factories.
So why wouldn't they come and try to? I mean,
they tried. It's not
they
that
did.
easy.
They tried to come over here and do it.
The distances, we had the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. They're just too great. I mean, they got Pearl Harbor, but yeah.
Man, that had to be frustrating from their side.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's radio. He's on this beast of a machine.
Yeah, so he gets assigned. I had to write it down here. To the 52nd Bomb Squadron, 29th Bomb Group, 21st Bomber Command of the 20th Air Force, which is that patch that we have right there. So they're under Curtis LeMay. So they're going to be
this one?
Correct. So they're going to be in the Pacific, and again, this is late war, so the whole goal is just bombing Japan. We are going to bomb Japan into submission. Have you ever heard of Curtis LeMay?
No.
He's a kind of a controversial figure. He's the general in charge of the Air Force, or the 20th Air Force, and all these guys. His whole strategy for fighting is if you kill enough of them, they'll stop fighting. He just doesn't give a shit. He later acknowledged, if the Japanese would have won, I would have been executed as a war criminal, because he just didn't care. Later on in the 60s, that his whole strategy was Cuban Missile Crisis, nuke them. Soviets, nuke. That mindset. They started the war. They want to fight. We're going to kill them. So that's Curtis LeMay. That's the guy that these guys are going to be fought out of.
He wants to.
Yeah. So Erwin and his crew get assigned to a plane. It's called the City of Los Angeles. That's going to be the name of their crew, and they're sent to Guam. He quickly has a reputation of being the best radio man on the squadron. Because remember, this is a guy that was almost a pilot. He was all these things.
He understands the whole thing.
Yeah, he's been in charge of all these guys since he was 17 years old.
Yeah.
So he's a squared away guy. And he's a quiet country boy. He's from Alabama, that thick Alabama accents. And he's very religious. So everything he's doing, he's not screwing around and stuff. He's goal-oriented, and he's the kind of guy you would want around.
And he's probably a guy that naturally has people follow him.
And he's very mature for his age, because he's been the man of his house since he was 10.
Yeah, I was going to say, you become the leader of the house. You have this natural fatherly type of
And not that all the other guys weren't good, but this is going to be the guy you're going to want to go to. Other guys might be screwing around. Yeah, Red will be over there working on his stuff.
You go shoot something by Red and say, hey, man, what do you think?
Exactly.
And he has like a righteous answer for you.
Yeah, he's 20-something years old, but he's got about 40 years of life experience at this point. I think he was 22 or 23 at the time of the mission. mission.
It's so crazy.
Well,
man.
the same as the rest of the crew and the
I
pilot.
know, but
These
it's
guys
just
are in their,
when you
their
hear
early
the
20s.
when you hear the stories and the ages, it just is mind-boggling.
Yeah,
man, to
what
think
they're doing. They're in
at
charge of
that
$1 million
age,
pieces
before
of
they even
equipment.
get to the military. I know I
Right.
say this every episode, but it just trips me out.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they finally get orders for the Pacific in January of 1945. So this is the tail end of the war.
Now,
right?
is it hot still? I mean, it's
It's
popping
this
off.
it's in Japan or in the war in the Pacific. This is
the
Okinawa, Iwo Jima. Most of the major casualty producing battles were in 1945.
Okay.
In the Pacific.
Yeah.
And like we've talked about, we're preparing for that invasion of Japan,
Yeah.
that main invasion.
That terrifying invasion.
So LeMay and some of these other guys, they're saying, well, we're not going to have that invasion if I kill everybody. So we're going to kill every single Japanese person that we can kill to try to prevent this invasion. We're going to soften them up. That's the whole goal of the B-29 bombing campaigns. Right?
Another great thing about America, where every leader wants to be the guy that freaking just smashes. So like,
well, some
do
of
you know
these
what I mean?
leaders were putting themselves in jeopardy too by doing this.
Yeah.
Because these could have failed. These missions
Right.
could have failed. You know, they're responsible for.
But there's something about that
lives.
ingenuity, knowing like, okay, if I'm a foot soldier or infantry guy, it makes me feel better that I got a guy in the
Right.
Air Force that has that
He's
mentality.
like a General Patton type guy.
Yes,
Like some
yes.
people are going, oh, he doesn't care about us, but other people are going, no, the more Germans we kill, the quicker we take Berlin, the
Yeah,
quicker
it's
we're
just
out
a
of here.
difference
let's
in
smash through
opinion,
'em.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some guys wouldn't want to fight for him, but this is that kind
But
of
the
guy
guys that
they're
do
fighting for.
are going to be monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to talk about the war in the Pacific in the air and stuff too, they get sent to Guam in January 1940 or February 11th, 1945. They get to Guam.
What's Guam like at this point?
It's a little island. Like I said, we had a battle there. There's still scattered Japanese around, so there can be some harassing fire. But for most of the guys there, you're going to be living in a hot little hut. You're going to be playing cards. You're going to be bored. They were allowed to take their pants. They would cut them off and make shorts. So just miserable boredom and bugs and crappy
What about
army
food,
Crappy army
showers?
food. There, you'll have your shower set up and stuff, but it's going to be very different than the 8th Air Force in England. You
Yeah.
know? But
MREs?
something similar, sea rations and stuff
Okay.
like that. They would have a chow hall probably
Okay.
there, but it's still better than what the grunts are dealing with, fighting. But it's just you'll do your mission, you'll fly back, and then you're just bored. And then you do your missions, you fly back, and you're just bored. One of the guys on the 20th Air Force remembers getting to his barracks on Guam, showed up, and they told his squadron or his plane basically, you guys are in those bunks right there. And the guy said, well, there's already clothes on the bunks. These belong to somebody. And they go, don't worry, they're dead. Those guys went off on a mission and just never came. So we'll get them back. And again, this is an 11-man crew of 20-year-olds and 19-year-olds and 23-year-olds.
So is he going over there jumping into another crew?
No,
or-
he's going with his crew.
His crew,
He's
okay.
going with his crew.
And they've trained together?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been training together in the States, and then they're sent
Man,
over
what an
there.
awkward thing, though, huh? Because
But that's-
that was Snuffy, right? He came into an existing...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, nobody
okay.
wanted him. That
Right,
was-
right.
Either way is bad, though, but just to give you that mindset of kind of your disposable,
Right in your face.
Yeah, there's death. These guys aren't coming back. They were there this morning when they laid their
they're
clothes
gone.
out, and now they're gone. And these are kids.
And then what
essentially.
happens with their stuff? Just sent home?
Somebody will
Pack it up.
distribute or go through it, try to get rid of anything that their family wouldn't want to see, and then they send it home to them.
Man. And that's a lot, right? I mean, you're not just... That's not every once in a while. These guys, these
Yeah,
high
this is a
casualties.
regular thing.
Yeah.
Not everybody's dying. People are getting shot down and taken prisoner. There's aircrafts going down. There's, I should say not everybody's getting shot down, but think of the mechanical problems on these. These planes, you get shot up, you come back, they're just welding them back together. So you might be
Yes.
flying over the Pacific and your plane just might go down.
Yeah, that's where you get the caterpillar patches and all
Yeah,
that.
exactly. But while they're on Guam, they continue training and then they start going on these missions. So he's designated the first aid man for his plane, for part of the plane. So he knows how to use the morphine and the equipment and all
So
that.
if somebody gets wounded or something,
Exactly.
he's on that.
Yeah. So we talked about the ceiling's 32,000 feet, right? They're dropping these bombs on Japan, and they're quickly realizing on these daylight raids that they're only having like 10% effectiveness with these bombs. So they decide, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to go from 25,000 feet down to 5,000 feet, and we're going to hit everything. So you just took away that
Your comfort zone.
your comfort zone and being above the high altitude. So they're going from high altitude daylight bombings to low altitude nighttime bombings, right? Which is something that you don't want to do.
Right.
So to up that, Curtis LeMay decides, rather than dropping these like bombs to blow things up, the Japanese live in wood houses. So we're going to drop napalm on them, essentially. We're going to burn the whole fucking city. We're going to burn Tokyo out of existence. If you guys want to start a war, we're going to fight a war. So they have what's called M69 incendiary bomblets, which are bombs that throw napalm, essentially. They're just going to throw these little bomblets out. They're going to catch fire. So rather than a bomb and an explosion and the concussion and the shrapnel, you're going to just start these massive fires. So burn the city down, essentially. Does that make sense?
Jeez.
So we're going to fly
never heard of this.
5,000. Yeah, these are the Tokyo fire bombs. They burn Tokyo.
Wow.
We're going to fly 5,000 feet above Tokyo, and we're just going to light the whole fucking city on fire. There's no way they can stop it, and you're just going to let the fire.
Was it effective?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. So on February 25th, 1945 was a massive bomb run. It was the most destructive, or it was one of the most destructive. It wasn't there yet, but Red and his unit go out on their first mission. Right, they're flying in part of this massive formation, and they're taking up to 50% losses again sometimes on these raids. When they started to fly out, their bomb bay doors didn't work, so they couldn't drop the bomb. So they actually diverted, so they were able to not take part in this mission. But on March 19th, 1945, was the most destructive air raid in the history of the world. Okay,
Damn.
These are these firebomb raids in Tokyo. Curtis LeMay actually ordered. We have, how many guns did I say we had on there?
11 or 12.
12 guns. Get rid of all of them except for the turret guns. We need more bombs. We need more fuel. So you're already going at 5,000 feet now rather than 25. You're taking away your guns. So again,
you're
a lot of guys are going, you're fucking nuts. But they want to get as many bombs as they can on target. Okay? So March 19th, 325 planes take off for Japan.
Gee, these are all the same size planes?
Correct. These are all B-29 size planes.
Oh, my God.
So Red Erwin's plane.
In formation?
In a formation. So they're going to start separate, and then they're going to come together over the target, right?
Jeez.
And
imagine being the enemy, dude.
Oh, these are civilians looking up and seeing their cities, right?
Just everywhere you look.
Exactly. And again, this is the war that they started, and this is the war that their emperor told them Japan will never be touched. You know, where all the enemies inferior to us. Right. We're going to wipe out the world. This is a couple years before, and now all of a sudden you're just seeing these giant steel monsters come over the sky, and you don't know what's coming out of them.
Oh my gosh.
So 325 planes take off. Red's plane is actually in the lead. They're the lead plane, so everyone's going to kind of recon on them, and you're going to hear that a couple times with Red's plane, so you know they're a good crew, right? So
they're leading this whole 300
They're leading
plus.
this whole 300 plus mission, and their job is when they get to 5,000, they're actually going to fly up and observe, so they're going to be flying around watching, basically. They have people on board that are analyzing what's going on.
The effectiveness of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a 15-hour round trip, 15-hour flight, no escort. Okay, so like Red, again, you're not sitting there flying and looking at. He's just sitting in the little corner of his plane for 15 hours, that extreme boredom. And then when they get there, only 279 planes made it because a lot of them had to drop out for mechanical reasons. But they just start bombing the city. The city was on fire. There was so much fire that it was visible for 150 miles, they said. Some of the pilots claimed they could hear people screaming on the ground coming up.
Wow.
The heat was so intense that you know how weather, heat, and cold.
Yeah.
It was pushing planes up to 2,000 feet per minute. So planes that were coming in after they had dropped the bombs were getting launched up, and planes were having to divert to not hit each other. The whole plane, 17 square miles, was on fire of Tokyo. Right, just incendiary devices.
My
so
gosh,
this was
man.
the hell of war that we brought to Japan for what they had done to try to end this war. They're trying to stop it. We lost 14 crews on the mission. 80,000 Japanese were killed in this raid.
80,000 in one day?
Correct. So these Tokyo firebombings, they lost more people there than we did in the atomic bombs. You'll hear about, the
and these
atomic
aren't
bombs.
people getting shot.
These are people melting, burning to death, right? Yeah, and the firefighter crews are on the ground trying to put out fires, but it's not going to stop. And everything's wood, and paper. So it's just spreading and spreading. Yeah, millions of people were left homeless as a result of this. Okay,
this is devastating.
This is. They could feel the heat in the planes 5,000 feet up in the air from dropping these bombs. And these are kids dropping bombs on families and people and everything else. This is what war is.
Gosh.
This is what war is.
So did this story get out?
Yeah, this was not a secret.
Oh, okay.
This was not a secret. This was celebrated. This was the most destructive raid in history. So Hirohito, the emperor of Japan, personally toured this area and said, I refuse to surrender.
Wow.
Okay, so it's... Okay, we're not. This is the enemy we're fighting. This is where we're going to have to send our troops in. This is what we're going to have to cause. We didn't start this war. We don't want to have to do this. You guys can stop this war at any time by surrendering. You're not going to do it? Okay, great. So the raid was so successful that Curtis LeMay orders 8 consecutive days of missions just like this. So for day after day after day, they just keep doing this until they run out of incendiary bombs, and the Japanese still refuse to surrender. So we're flying over with these napalm-type bombs, burning cities, essentially, trying to cause as much death and destruction as we can, trying to force them to surrender so we don't have to invade the country, and they're still refusing. And that's what the 20th Air Force and the military is facing.
Oh, my gosh. So what was the casualty rate at the end of these 14 days?
I don't know the total count for the end of the 8 days.
If the first day was 80,000.
The first day was 80,000. That would have been the most major one.
Yeah, because that would
then they're going to be
everybody
bombing
would have
other
fled
sites
at that
and stuff
point.
like that. Yeah.
Holy God!
Hundreds of
Imagine what that
thousands.
looked like.
Yeah.
80,000 people. I mean, by itself would be
Right. And some of these people are just incinerated. They're gone.
Yeah.
And the Japanese government's refusing
that's
to surrender.
generations
Potentially.
or a generation, right?
Yeah, potentially.
Jesus.
So this is the conditions that they're flying in, though. So this is not a friendly war anymore. This is war at its worst. This is casualties horrific on both sides.
Yeah.
This is what they're dealing.
Are the
with.
guys having a hard time with this?
For the most part, no. And
Yeah.
LeMay talked about that. Like I said, he said I would be considered a war criminal if the Japanese won.
Yeah.
But if they, like I said, if you kill enough of them, they're going to stop fighting.
Yeah.
Period. They started the war. They can stop it at any time.
Yeah.
All they have to do is put their hands up and say they stop. But they're refusing.
It's
so we're
it's
just gonna
very
keep killing
interesting
them.
that the atomic bombs are looked at so crazy.
Because most people are ignorant of
This
history.
seems worse.
These are way worse. These are way worse.
Right.
But this is what
An atomic
we were trying
bomb
to
is
do.
instant, right?
Right. And
And
it's
freaking burning to death.
there's
sounds
there's
horrific.
after effects, but comparatively, this is
Man, I've never heard of this.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't. That's just the 20th Air Force is kind of known
Yeah.
for the firebombs of Tokyo. So more and more missions Red's going to be participating on. Like I said, some of these are 10 hours, 15 hours going over to these targets.
Yeah.
The flak's so thick that you can walk across it. They basically say that's those enemy
Yep.
because of course they see these planes, they know what's coming. They're going to be trying to stop you. So there's gonna
With
be,
every bone in their body.
everything they have, right?
Yeah.
So on April 2nd, 1945, this is going to be either his 10th or 11th mission. I've heard it both ways. Again, they're
Does
going
he
to be
still have that thing where he gets to a certain amount of missions and he can bounce?
No, that's
okay,
long
that's a
gone.
different
That's
thing.
long
Okay.
gone at this point. They're going to be the lead plane again on this mission, right? So they're going to be going to a chemical plant 120 more miles north of Tokyo. And this is a plant that produces basically jet fuel or a component for jet fuel. So how do we stop the Japanese planes from flying if we can't kill them?
Go
We
after
stop
their
their
fuel.
ability to fly. So they're going to go over and they're going to burn these fucking fuel joints, right?
The strategy's amazing.
This is warfare, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's from the first caveman who picked up a rock and bludgeoned another person to death. It's just been what else can we do to
Just
kill people?
evolving from there.
Yeah, so they go on this mission, and the actual the squadron commander for the whole 52nd Bombardier Squadron, which was Colonel Strauss, I believe, was actually going to ride in their plane with them to observe, basically. So instead of 11 men, they have 12 men. At this point, Red's 23 years old. He's been married for 3 months. He just got word from home that his wife had a miscarriage, so he's got that on his mind.
Yeah.
They're going to be flying across. The B-29s are going to fly separate, and then when they get over the target, they're going to come back together, okay? So the way they're going to do that is the lead plane's going to drop these flares, these incendiary flares, so everybody can see it. So that's going to be Red's job, okay? So at about 9:30, they're over the target. They're hovering over the target zone. They're about 9,000 feet up in the air. So Red's job is to take they're 20-pound bombs, incendiary flares. They're about 16 inches long, and they're 20 pounds. So he's going to pull the pin and drop them out the chute. There's a 6-second delay on these, okay? So it's going to drop a couple hundred feet, and then it's going to explode in the air. So all these other planes that are looking through the cloud and the flak and all the enemy guns and planes going down, they're going to see this, and they're going to know, okay, it's time to rendezvous, because they have to be on that lead plane, right? There's no maps up in the
And you don't want to be traveling in formation. It's too easy target,
exactly.
right?
And it conserves fuel by flying separate because you have the drag. Or
Oh,
everything.
okay.
So this is going to bring him in. So Red does his job. He drops the first flare, goes out. He drops the second, and it goes out. And then when he goes to drop the last one, something goes wrong. And they don't know what happened. They don't know if they hit an air pocket. They don't know if they hit, if it exploded inside. But this is a white phosphorus can. Do you know what white phosphorus is?
No.
It's basically I think it's a chemical would be the right word for it. It's a type of incendiary that will burn as long as there's contact with oxygen. So have you ever seen We Were Soldiers?
Uh-uh.
I could damn you.
You know that.
There's white phosphorus grenades and stuff. Like they'll burn through you. Basically, they won't stop burning as long as they're exposed to that oxygen. It's going to keep that chemical is just going to sear through anything it touches. Right?
Okay.
So that's what he's dealing with. The 20-pound canister 16 inches long. He drops it down the chute, and instead of going down, it shoots right back up. Okay, it shoots right back up into the plane, and he felt something was wrong, so he tried to cover it up with his feet, but it hit him right in the face. So these burn over between 1,000 and 2,000 degrees. Okay, the white phosphorus flare hits Red right in the nose, right in the face as it comes on. So instantaneously, he's blinded. He has phosphorus in his eyes, and it's covered in his body. Think of, you ever seen anyone kick a thing of gasoline into a fire? And that gasoline? So he's covered. So his arms are bare at this time. It melted his nose off. It lit his hair on fire, so his hair is completely extinguished, and it burned his right ear off, okay? So he's literally...
That's fast.
This is instantaneously. So as it explodes in the plane, the whole interior of the plane is going to light up like you just flick the lights on in a dark house, okay?
Yeah.
Smoke envelops the plane, because that's the whole point of this thing, is to cause the smoke. So the smoke becomes so thick that the pilot can't see his panel. So the plane immediately goes into a dive. So from 9,000 feet, they start careening towards the ground. Red's on the ground screaming. He's literally blind. He has burning magma in his eyes. His nose is burned off. His ears burned off. His hair's on fire, and there's smoke everywhere. Nobody can see anything.
So painful, too.
Most intense pain you can possibly think of.
Yeah, burns are the worst, man. Chemical burns.
Yeah, and it's chemical burn that'll continue to go through. So they'll teach you to try to pack it with mud and get it out with a knife or a bayonet to get that piece out, because it won't stop burning, basically. So that's you can't imagine any more pain than this.
And so his other crewmates are witnessing this.
So they're all in their positions, but you're going in a straight dive down to the ground. Now, the bigger problem you have is the flare didn't hit Red and go away. The flare's on the ground now, this signal flare.
Yeah, and it's made to smoke.
It's made to burn, and it'll burn through the metal. So what happens if it burns through the metal?
Depressurized.
No, it's going to go straight into the bomb bay, which is full of incendiary bombs. Now, remember, these bombs are designed to explode canisters of napalm, right?
My
So if you blow this B-29 up, not only are you killing all 12 people on board, because the squadron commander's on board, but that explosion of that plane can hit all these other planes that are coming into this formation now, right? So all these other planes are coming in. They've seen Red drop the flares. They're coming towards. Now this plane is careening into a death dive, and at any minute it can explode. If that flare burns through that steel and hits those bombs, they're all fucking dead. Not just the guys on the plane, but potentially a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Red's on fire, literally. Red's in the most intense pain of his life. Red's eyes are closed from, like I said, I'm going to use the word magma. That's not the right word.
That's what it sounds like.
But basically magma on his face. But he never loses consciousness. And he remembers his training. He remembers in training that if you panic, you're lost. If you don't panic, you always have a chance, right?
Yeah.
So even though he's in the most intense pain of his life, he basically would want to die. This is so bad. He tries to calm himself down. He takes a few breaths, and he starts to pray. He doesn't pray, make the pain stop. He doesn't pray, Lord, please help me, or why did this happen? He says, Lord, I need your help now. And he said he immediately felt a sense of calm over him. And he's literally blind. He can't see. He starts feeling along on the ground, right? And he's hearing voices in his head saying, go, 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 you can do it. And these are just voices in his head. He's feeling, but keep in mind what you're feeling for. A hot, burning piece of white phosphorus.
A torch. A freaking bottle, a giant bottle rocket.
Throw a piece of metal in a fire, take it out and hold it. If he's lucky and he finds it, he's going to be holding a 1,000+ degree Fahrenheit piece of metal. So he's feeling around on the ground. He's feeling along for about 10 seconds while he's on fire, physically on fire. And he finds it. He finds that piece of metal, that 16-inch, 20-pound piece of metal. So this isn't small, right?
Yeah.
This is a big thing. Meanwhile, the plane's careening into a dive. We're going 9,000 feet, 8,000 feet, 7,000 feet, 6,000 feet. Guys are bracing. They're holding on to the thing, but Red is fighting for everyone's life. So Red finds it, and that hot piece of white phosphorus metal, he grabs it with his arm, and he brings it into his body like a football. Okay? The heat is so intense, it fuses his arm and his body. His skin is literally melting. So he starts crawling forward. He has about 30 feet he has to make it. He knows in his head, again, through all this intense pain, through everything that's going on, he knows the only way he can get this out of the plane is there's a co-pilot's window he can get open, and that's about 30 feet away. So he starts crawling. So every
so he's not even trying to get to the little port.
No, he can't get it out there at this point. Something happened, so we can't go back that way. And he can't see. He's literally blind. His eyes are closed. They're burning.
Gosh.
This isn't like I'm blind from smoke. There is phosphorus in his eyeballs.
Yeah.
So he's crawling forward. There's equipment in the way. There's people in the way. There's a navigator's tables in the way. He's literally holding this with that sheer force of will to his body.
Jesus.
It's literally melting his skin and causing him to be on fire. So guys that are watching this, if they look, you're literally seeing the Human Torch. You're seeing through the smoke, you're seeing somebody on fire. You're seeing somebody that is literally melting. But Red is able to summon some inner strength from God knows where and to crawl. So every step he's taking, every time he's putting his hand down, the skin's literally melting off of him. That hot piece, again, between 1,000 and 2,000 degrees is between his arm and his chest, and he's holding it to him. He's got a life vest on, but that's about the only thing that's protecting him. His arms are completely bare. He crawls forward, and he actually passed one guy and said, "Excuse me," because he's so damn polite. When he reached the navigator's table, it was locked. You have to reach up and unlock it. He was able to reach up and unlock it, and he was so hot that his skin from his hand seared to the table and was left behind. This isn't, again, like I always say, this isn't hyperbole, this isn't nonsense. Skin's melting off him as he's pushing up this tray table, as he's moving forward. Dude. Third-degree burns all over his body. His head's on fire, his neck's on fire, his face is on fire, his hands are on fire, his arms are on fire. These are third-degree burns. This is all the way through your flesh. This is all the way down to the muscle. This is everything. While the plane is diving down, he finally gets up and he starts yelling, open the window, open the window. And these guys that don't know what's happening, because they're trying to pull the plane out of the dive, trying to pull out trying to figure things out, they finally get the window open. With Red's last bit of strength, he's able to force his body up and flop the flare out of the plane. As he does so, the open window sucks a lot of that oxygen up, and the pilots are able to pull that out of a dive 300 feet above the water. So they went from 9,000 feet to 300 feet in a matter of less than a minute. Meanwhile, Red's been on fire, literally melting by this bomb, right, for about 30 seconds. The crew runs over to Red, and they start spraying him with a fire extinguisher, trying to get this fire off. Because it's phosphorus, it doesn't stop it. So this continues to smolder inside him. The pieces that are inside him are continuing to smolder. He had been on fire between 20 and 30 seconds. When he opened his mouth, smoke came out of his mouth, which means the fire's basically inside of him, lungs, right? Yeah. So these guys are literally just watched one of the most incredible feats of human will, and they're watching their friend, and now they know he's going to die there, right? So I keep wanting to call him Ray. Erwin actually tells them, when he's able to talk, he says, "Don't worry about me, continue the mission." And unfortunately, that's normally what they would have to do, right? Yeah. They have orders, don't stop this flight for anything, you got to go on with the mission. But because they have that colonel with him, he's able to override that. He says he need to get him to Iwo Jima now, because remember, Iwo Jima we had taken, so instead of 6 hours back to Guam, it's 3 hours back. So they fly
3 hours?
A 3-hour flight, yeah. So they're shooting.
Imagine the pain.
Exactly,
and it's a delayed always with a burn, and it gets worse.
He said it was the most intense pain of his life, and he would have been happy just to die right there. Yeah. But his face is burned, his head is burned, his nose and his ear are burned off. They're melted off. His index finger's burned off. His right hand is stuck to his body. The flesh is fused together. His wrist is broken, and there's phosphorus in his eyes. He can't see. So they're trying to give him plasma to help with the pain. They start shooting him with plasma, and he has the presence of mind. After they shoot him with the first one, they go give him another one because they know how bad he is. And he starts yelling, "No, you're going to kill me. Don't kill me," because he doesn't want to die. And he knows he's smart enough because he's the first aid guy that'll kill him. And they might have been trying to kill him. I would have probably tried to kill him just to make it easy. Just to put him out of his damn misery there. But yeah, for 3 hours.
So are they hitting him with morphine and everything?
Hitting him with morphine, and they're trying to get plasma, but they can't get to a vein because he's so burned. Plasma, it replaces the fluids. It can keep you from going into shock.
Oh, okay.
So somebody that knows better than me, I don't know, but they were saying with these intense burns and with the phosphorus burns, your body can go into shock. You can have kidney failure. You can have multiple organ failure. And I don't know if that's phosphorus specifically or just fire specifically. Yeah. But he's burned over 20% of his body. This exposed part is third-degree burn, all the way down to the muscle. It's just completely gone.
Damn.
For 3 hours, they get him back. He's so bad when they get to Iwo Jima, they can't take him out properly. They have to use a crane and pull him out of the top of or one of the windows because they can't bring him out. But he actually was able to survive until he got to Iwo Jima. So his crew watches him. They kind of say goodbye, and then they immediately kind of get together, and they know that this is the most incredible thing they've ever seen, essentially. Yeah. So they write him.
And what was a colonel that was with him?
Yeah, a colonel that was with him.
So that's right in front of us.
He knows his damn life. Yeah, and he's in charge of the whole squadron, so he knows his life was saved for sure. They get him to the hospital in Guam. They start working on him. They have to scrape the phosphorus out of his eyes. They're trying to save his eyesight. They're trying to scrape it out of his body. and techniques for treating burn victims at this time wasn't as good as it is now, and all these things. So he has this horrible pain in front of him. The next day, they give his citation. They wrote him a quick Medal of Honor citation. They give it to Curtis LeMay. He immediately approves it, and he sends it to Washington, saying time is of the essence. This guy's going to die, and we want to give him this medal before he dies. Right?
Yeah.
So it was actually one of the fastest modern approvals, 6.5 hours from the time it got to Washington to the time it made it all the way up to Truman. One of Truman's first acts as president was to approve the Medal of Honor.
Whoa.
Truman's the president because Roosevelt had just died. So Red was actually in a hospital, and he heard over the radio funeral music for Franklin Roosevelt, and he thought it was him. He thought he died and the angels were coming because he heard the choir music, but it was actually because Roosevelt had died. So he's in this hospital, and they want to give him the medal. And I'll show you pictures later, or you'll post them up, I'm sure. He's bandaged from head to toe, both arms, everything. They want to give him a medal, the Medal of Honor, before he dies, but there's no medals in the Pacific Theater other than in Hawaii. There's a Medal of Honor in a case. So the top brass orders a B-29 crew, go to Hawaii and get the medal. So they fly their B-29 to Hawaii. They get there. It's in a locked case, and they can't find the general to get permission to open it. So they just smash the case, steal the medal, and fly back to Guam so they can pin it on Red before he dies. Red, being the kind of guy he is, he chooses not to die, essentially, right? So despite the fact that they, if he makes it through the beginning, they know he survives, and he ends up living. Yeah, all these infections and things. They asked him, "Is there anything you can do for you?" He says, "I want to see my brother. My brother's a Marine. I haven't seen him in 4 years. He's been fighting." So they actually flew his brother to his side, and he recovered. Long road of surgeries ahead of him, but through the same will that kept him alive on the plane, it kept him alive for 50 years after this, right?
50? So, he survived.
He survived, yeah. So on May 7th, 1945, he was brought back to the U.S. His injuries were so severe. Again, I can give you a list of the injuries here, but he ended up having years of surgeries. For the next year, they periodically had to sew his eyes shut to try to improve his vision. They ended up saving his left eye, so he had vision in his left eye. But he had, they had to sew his arm to his abdomen, trying to get flesh to grow. They had to sew his mouth shut for skin grafts because his lips had been burned away. He had to drink through a straw. He went from 165 pounds to 87 pounds while he was there.
Oh, my gosh.
Skin from his abdomen was grafted onto his ear to give him a new ear. They were trying to reconstruct his face. They would make him sit in like a whirlpool for hours where they'd snip the skin off, that burned skin. They were going to amputate his leg, but he begged them not to, so they used skin from his abdomen. So they're just cutting, like almost like a Frankenstein on this guy. For the rest of his arm, his right arm was immobile. They had to break his wrist because it was like in a claw. His right arm was fused essentially to his body and just completely immobile. But his legs were good and his mind was sharp. So he had 41 surgeries. He spent 2.5 years in the hospital, but he was able to survive. And his wife, one of the things they talked about was he was in the burn ward, and he's seeing all these guys that are so hard off that their families would come see him, and some of these young wives would walk in, see them, how bad they were, and they would just leave their wedding rings and leave because it was just too much for them. Some of these people got married as kids, and now these guys are coming home. So he didn't know what was going to happen to him, but his wife came.
Oh, the wives would come
and leave them
and see their husband,
right? See how bad they were because they knew they couldn't deal with it. So as he's recovering, he's
kind of accepting it.
He's waiting to see what's going to happen. But his wife, who was only 19 years old at the time, he was 23. She shows up. She found the one part on his face that wasn't completely burned. She gave him a kiss, and she told him, "I'm going to stay with you for the rest of my life." And she did.
Shit.
And they ended up having 4 kids. They were together for over 50 years.
That's ride or die.
He died in 2002 at 80 years old. He had 4 kids, 8 grandkids, and 14 great-grandkids.
What an amazing wife, dude.
And again, despite his severe injuries, and you're going to see the pictures of him and stuff, he didn't live a disabled life. He went to work for the VA. He worked for the VA for the rest of his life. He helped other veterans get their benefits. For 37 years, he worked for the VA until he retired. His kids described him as a good, loving, religious person. He was able, his right arm, like I've said 100 times, was fused to his body, but he would still umpire baseball, and he would still take them out and hit them fly balls. So he would take the bat, shove it in his gap in his arm, throw the ball up as high as he could, grab it with his left hand, and hit grounders and fly balls to his kids so he could live that normal life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, good man, Henry Red Erwin.
Good wife, too.
Good life. Yeah, he lived for They expected him to die that day in 1945, but he lived another 57 years. He was able to live.
And then what did his guys say?
Well, they were the ones that wrote him up for the Medal of Honor, so they knew very well.
Everybody
what
was
he had
fully
done.
aware.
And he ended up being good friends with the pilot after.
So it's 100% death if he didn't do that.
100% death guaranteed for every 12 minutes. They were 300 feet from the waterline. There's no surviving that.
Jesus.
And that's luck if that, while they're flying, because when he grabbed it, they weren't at 300 feet. They were up higher. Had he not done that, it could have blown the incendiary bombs. Those incendiary bombs would have blown God only knows how many people.
Yeah.
Because you look.
Jeez, man.
There's videos in the Pacific of bombers dropping bombs on each other. They're being in the wrong formation, or when they're coming up, they're clipping.
When you're talking hundreds in formation,
exactly.
dropping you can imagine.
And
the
you're
chaos.
Flying by navigate, or you're flying by your equipment and your panels.
Yeah,
and
you
not
don't
by
have the
sight,
technology that they have nowadays.
And there's explosions going off. And
Yeah,
there's all this
exactly.
kind of stuff going on.
It's crazy.
There's so much margin for error. And then you have a dive with an incendiary groove. And again, this is 20 pounds, 16 inches long. This isn't something you can just kind of pick up. He had to tuck it to his body like a football.
And when you're holding it, it's got weight to it.
Like I said,
It's not like you can juggle it.
Right. Exactly. And it's not like you can hold it with your fingers.
Yes.
It melted his index finger off his left hand. It fused his right hand like a claw. And it's if you threw a piece of metal in a fire.
You couldn't imagine the pain.
I
couldn't think of anything worse pain.
Right. They had to scrape phosphorus out of his eyes for a year after that. For months after the incident, he would start smoldering. The phosphorus that was still inside him when it would be exposed to the oxygen. You can't make up pain worse than that. That's why they picture hell as, a fire escape as it is. But again, in the pain that he was in, he could have just zoned out and rode it to death for 10 seconds and went to the ground.
10 more seconds.
But he knew he had to save everybody. And like I said, he prayed for help. And he didn't pray, save my life. He didn't pray, stop my pain. He prayed, Lord, I need your help right now. Not, I need your help to stop the pain. I need your help to find this piece of metal so I can get it to my body and hurt myself even more. That phosphorus exploding in his face took his nose and his ear off.
And most people would have just sat there.
And they would have been fine,
would have been
too.
totally fine to do that.
Exactly, yeah.
But man, that's a crazy story.
Yeah.
That's a good one, man.
So another one of what was going on over the skies of Europe and the Pacific when these young men were forced to go to war. And
how old was he?
He was 23 when the incident
years
happened.
Old. Think about that.
He turned 24 in the hospital while he was
Unbelievable,
recovering.
Man.
And then again, working for the VA for 37 years. I think I would just be medically retired after
and pissed off.
Yeah.
At everything.
And you'll see pictures of him. Like I said, so one of his the crew members said, I think they did a terrible job on his face because he doesn't look good. He lived the rest of his life like that. And even his wife and his kids would say that it would bother them when other little kids would see him and they'd say, "What happened to your face, mister?" Because they thought that was hurtful, but he never let it get to him because he would just explain it to him, and he would always say, like a lot of the other guys, "I'm not a hero. The heroes are the ones that didn't come back." And his quote in all the books and stuff is, "Freedom isn't free." And then he lists all the people that died in World War II, the numbers. 500,000 people died for our freedom. So remember them. Man. So
good one to come back to.
Yeah.
Good job, man.
All right,
that's good. So you're getting the hats out to people.
Yeah,
right?
I hit some people up. I was trying to get them on earlier, but Donnie gave me coronavirus. So so those of you guys that I contacted regarding the hats, I'll be getting those out to you guys.
Same thing goes until we're out of them.
Yeah.
So hit us with some comments, suggestions, and we'll send you a hat. Anything else you got?
Rock and roll. Thanks for listening, guys.
All right, we'll see you guys.
See ya.